I'm Cheryl, people and culture consultant, coach, and facilitator, and this is episode 10 of the Wholehearted Hub. We have been talking about vulnerability, and last time we took a little bit of a right turn or left turn, whichever direction you prefer, and talked about radical candor. And today it might seem like a little bit of a chicane in the road, but I'll talk about how it fits in. So I have a little bit of a share. I'm currently taking a trauma-informed practice program. For context, as part of the work that I do, I work with a lot of different humans, and this is me ensuring that I am learning the best way to approach all of the work that I do with individuals and organizations to not re-traumatize anyone who has experienced trauma in their life. And in this week's class, we were talking about a subject, and one of my colleagues in the class was sharing some information about a perspective that she had, and I posed a challenge to her. I had been listening to a podcast, and in the podcast, there was research presented that posed an alternative perspective to the thing that she was talking about. And so when she was sharing it, I was like, oh, in my mind, little voice was like, oh, exciting opportunity to share this new information that you have. And so I said to her, oh, I have a challenge for you. And proceeded to share the information that I learned in this podcast, which was with two very reputable scientists. And so it wasn't just like Joe Schmo off the street. So I was really posing it as a challenge on behalf of the podcast, but alas. And so the teacher challenged me on my choice of words. Being a trauma-informed practice program, it's her job to bring attention to all of the things that would be in conflict to a trauma-informed approach. And so my intention originally with the challenge that I posed was to widen the conversation and open up alternate perspectives to what was being discussed. And as she pointed out, by using the language that I used, by saying, I have a challenge for you, I perhaps inadvertently negated the intention completely. And so what I mean by this is, her point is that the word challenge can be considered quite confrontational. And she also pointed out it's a word that I use often. And so I decided to take a look at the origin of the word challenge. And forgive me for reading this part. So the origin of the word challenge comes from a Latin word that means to bring false accusations, interpret wrongly, or criticize. That leads it into an old French verb that means to accuse or bring claim, which is really fascinating. Do you ever just look up the origin of words that you use and see what they actually come from? I love doing that. Anyway, fun facts about Cheryl. And so I think that her bringing it up is very valid when we really look at the origin of the word challenge. So her point was that if the intention of the conversation was to open up and bring alternative perspectives to those that you are in discussion with, from a trauma-informed approach, I may have inadvertently done the exact opposite. Because the word challenge is quite confrontational, I probably didn't invite the openness to an alternative perspective at all. And so everything about a trauma-informed approach is to ensure that we are taking any person's potential previous trauma, even if we don't know that there was one. It's just trying to bring an approach that would not traumatize anybody or bring about a negative nervous system response. And so choosing different words is effective. And my point of bringing it up in this YouTube episode is that when we are presented with perspectives that are alternate to our own, it can feel really vulnerable. And in that vulnerable place is an opportunity for growth and development, but it doesn't necessarily feel nice. It feels perhaps scary and like threatening, like a perceived threat. I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago how I was challenged by a CEO that I was working with on language that I was using in a meeting. And in that moment, I felt really vulnerable. I felt the heat of that challenge. And even though I accepted it, inside I could feel the activation of like, whoop, like protect, protect, which is what our nervous system is intended to do. And so the intersection of personal growth and development and the vulnerability that comes with personal growth and development. In coaching school, someone said, and I wish I could credit them, but I don't remember who it was. When it comes to coaching and it comes to growth, comfort is not required, but willingness is. And that's the point of this conversation. So I was challenged on my use of the word challenge and how it may not have been an effective tool at the time or an effective choice of words for what my intentions were. The reflection that I leave you with today is, if you are someone who loves discussion, someone who loves growth and development and learning something that's beyond your own personal lived experience, your own knowledge, then pay attention to the language that you use and the language that others use with you and the reactions that it brings up. And consider exploring some other words that could be used to create a more effective way to bring about that conversation. Maybe a more effective way to get the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And so, if we go back to the challenge that I had posed in my class with the knowledge from the podcast, an alternate way that I think I could have posed it was, instead of saying, I have a challenge for you, saying, I'd be really curious to share something that I learned in this podcast that is in contrast to what you've shared. Or what could be possible if this were true, and share what it was that I learned. Or just saying, you know what I heard in a podcast today? Where it's not really an actual challenge, it's just a sharing of knowledge and something that could open up the conversation to new information. I'm always curious to explore different ways of looking at things. And so I also invite you in the comment section below, what are some of the things that you would like to explore from a different language perspective or from a previously known as challenge perspective? As always, thank you for being here. The sun has also arrived. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next time.